It's Christmas Eve, and you guys are probably wondering, or maybe you're not wondering, where all of these Christmas decorations come from. Christmas decorations are relatively cheap, really affordable to buy, and 60% of them are made in one place in this world, and it's in a town called Yiwu, China, okay? So a photographer by the name of Toby Smith was really curious about this, and he wanted to see what the working conditions were like for the people that make our Christmas decorations. And here's what we found, okay? Yiwu, where 60% of the world's Christmas decorations are made by workers in 600 factories, and they're shipped around the globe, okay? According to Toby, from a health and safety perspective, the exposure to harmful chemicals and solvents is disturbing. I also witnessed manufacturing techniques with machines that could easily be criticized from a Western vantage point. Okay.
Yeah, now, look, I'm mixed on this story. First of all, I'm devastated to find out that it's not really the North Pole where they're making this stuff. You know, some goofballs still believe in that. You know, there's a town called North Pole in Alaska where they still get tons of letters to Santa, and they have to hire extra workers to sort through the letters. So,
it's cute that they sort through them and they don't just ignore them.
Yeah, that's true. I give them that, right? But in reality, if you're looking for Santa, you're going to want to go to Yiwu, China, at least for the decorations part. But actually, the photographer here was mixed as well. You know, he said he was uncomfortable by the things that Anna just mentioned, but he said they don't have terrible working conditions on the other hand, and he seemed like they were in decent health, etc.
Yeah,
right?
He was concerned about them inhaling chemical fumes and things like that that might actually cause long-term health issues, but he said the social environment was nice. Let me give you his exact quote. The social working environment, working hours, and general atmosphere of the factory was actually more pleasant than I have experienced in other manufacturing sectors. I don't know if comparing it to other manufacturing sectors is putting it at a high standard. I mean, it really depends on what he means. Are you talking about manufacturing sectors in the United States or other manufacturing sectors in, you know, developing countries or in China? I'm really curious what he means by that. But nonetheless, it still doesn't sound that great.
And a writer for the BBC, Tim Mon, also accompanied him, and he was much more concerned.
Yeah, he was. He says that upstairs is the plastic molding room, mainly staffed by young men, stripped to the waist because of the heat. The air here is thick with fumes, the smell of chemicals, and warm plastic. The men feed plastic pellets from Samsung-branded sacks and into machines to be melted down, and then pressed into molds to make toy snowmen and Father Christmases. It's repetitive and potentially dangerous, as the workers must constantly reach inside the large presses.
So there's this really interesting visual. You know, you think of the North Pole and cold and fun little elves working stuff. It's really a young Chinese guy with his shirt off because it's so hot as he makes all that plastic ornaments, right? Now, on the other hand, I'm a capitalist. And so I understand that as countries are developing, it is a process, right? And that in the beginning, oftentimes, since it's cheaper to produce in certain areas, and it started with China and then eventually went to Vietnam and other places like that, Laos, et cetera, that you have really terrible working conditions, as we had here in America, and that they slowly improve. And in fact, in China, they are slowly improving. And this is what you hear here is an improvement on older stories we've done, right? And in fact, that's part of why a lot of that manufacturing is moving to Southeast Asia and out of China, because now they think it costs too much to do it in China, because China has a growing middle class.
Right, and at what point does it stop, though, right? And yes, China does have a growing middle class, but at the same time, I mean, we're comparing this story, I mean, I think you're doing it subconsciously. I think you're comparing this story to the stories we've done in the past with, you know, the iPhone factories, or the iPhone manufacturers, I should say, in China, having employees jump out of buildings. So they have to create nets around the building so people don't die. I mean, if you're comparing it to that, then yes, this story sounds a little better. But
my favorite was when Mitt Romney said, no, they have barbed wire fences to keep people out because they want to come into the factory so much.
They want to come in.
Yeah, I know they do want to get jobs at the factories. That part is true, but that's not what the barbed wire fences are for.
It's ridiculous. One other thing that I want to say is, like, we do live in a glass house in the United States as well. So we do have union-protected jobs which look out for labor rights. We do have labor laws. But, you know, just recently we did a story on Amazon and how they were facing a class action lawsuit because of the working conditions that they put their employees in. So, you know, they would work in the summertime with no AC, and a lot of them suffered the consequences of that. So we have issues here in the United States too. That's why it's really important to support unions, regardless of, what your political ideology is. If you're in the middle class or working class, unions are looking out for you. They're not looking out for the wealthy people. They're making sure you're getting paid an appropriate amount of money and you're working in acceptable conditions.
So, of course, not every union is right, and unions have lost tremendous power in America. For example, I don't agree with a lot of what the union's doing with the NYPD. They have a very strong union over there. Sometimes to the detriment of the citizens, if you ask me. Okay, so it's all complicated, right? But don't mistake me saying that this is part of what normally happens for saying it's awesome and we shouldn't do any regulation, we should just let them have at it, right? No, part of what happens is what Anna's referring to here is eventually the workers get together, and you can call it a union, you can call it anything else you like, but they get together for leverage, because by themselves they have no leverage. But when all the people working at a factory get together, then they actually can negotiate with their employers, and then that way they can begin to improve their working conditions. So we're in the middle of that improvement process in China. We're nowhere near the end of it, and I think that they should continue to push for reforms. And I hope that eventually the end is where we've lifted up all these countries and we've created middle class, and not just in China, but in Vietnam, et cetera. And then, we're not going to get to a utopia, but it's part of the process. And part of that process is pointing out what actually happens. So don't be under any illusion about what happens in the districts. Okay, here in the capital, we enjoy our Christmas trees, but there's somebody in District 11 making that Christmas ornament, and it's not really a pleasant job.